You're experiencing the Authentic Chaos podcast, an exploration into our inner selves and journeys of self-discovery. I'm your host, Vahagan Yarnosian, and joining me today is a friend of mine, Stephen Ritchie.
Hey, Malcolm. Yeah, good to be on.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. Stephen is calling in from South Africa. I met him on my trip to Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and we really hit it off. He actually really helped me out when I had some travel issues leaving Cambodia. He gave me a place to crash for the night, which was very appreciated. I thank you so much for that.
No, just happy to help, man. You definitely didn't have a boring sort of exit.
Yeah. So, Stephen, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself to the audience? Maybe a couple sentences, something that maybe you'd like people to know about you.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, South African, Cape Townian, born and bred. I might be the stereotype, just not my accent. I always seem to people always like, hey, you sound like you're from Joburg or Durban. So that's my struggle, I suppose. About me, yeah, I'm a software developer, sort of logistical software. And then in my personal life, I think I'm a hobby enthusiast. I got quite a lot of interests. And I think, yeah, just all around quite social person. I mean, I can highlight some hobbies or.
Yeah, what are some of the hobbies that are exciting you lately?
Yeah, so I've got kind of this thing where I try to keep like hobbies going, but like sometimes I'm like, cool, I've almost like ticked that box. It
Yeah.
almost feels like I've done a full circle experience. So the ones that are sort of running and I'm quite into now, fire dancing. I do the poi and the fire staff. I just started practicing at home. A friend was like, "Hey, you like niche hobbies?" And this was sort of in response to me at the time being into roller skating quite hardcore.
Oh, nice.
And so
Oh,
he's like,
hardcore roller skating and
I
fire
know it was
dancing.
good because like when people say roller skating, they think like I suppose the equivalent of going on an ice rink. They think, oh, you just kind of go. You're probably alright.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm actually pretty hardcore. I do like lots of tricks, and I don't know. I had the knack.
Nice.
I got a rollercade down here, and I used to hit there weekly. Sort of got a bit injured, so that was sort of the hey, that was fun. Next, but yeah.
So you felt like you
And then,
needed to up the ante and go to fire dancing?
I mean, when you put it like that, right? Yeah, yeah. So I mean, as my friend was just like, "Hey, let me teach you this other niche skill," and so I started learning. I almost kind of gave up at the start because it's quite a learning curve. Hey,
Yeah, I can
but
only
then
imagine.
yeah, it's many painful hours of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
But like it's a lot of fun. You sort of get in a rhythm. There's even like some people who are really into it, like will say that it's kind of like a mental health thing because you get into a sort of a state of flow, and that's kind of where you just have that hyper sort of focus. Especially because of the sort of knowledge of imminent danger, sort of heightens that. Where you're like, well, we can't stop. It also motivates you because you're like, well, like some hobbies, it's like you can sort of half do it, but the fire dancing, it's like, well, you either nail it or you burn off your face. So there's that
Have you
conviction
singed in the
element.
eyebrows?
Yeah. No, I haven't. No, I singed my beard once, but not that I ever grow like massive ones. But I
Yeah.
did feel the whiskers. I
Yeah.
I mean, I caught my shirts caught on fire a few times.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's actually like sort of surreal, and so like you first won't notice. It's funny, like
Hmm.
your body's warning detection system doesn't seem so like savvy in that. Like you'll just be like super flame in your shirt, but you're so watching the crowd and thinking on what you're doing that you're
Yeah, yeah.
like eventually you notice or someone points to you, and there's like a thing where you have a spotter who's meant to be because fire dancers actually don't know they're like just on fire in a blaze sometimes, like the hair and stuff until it's too late. Someone points at you and be like, "Yeah, we got a pro." Well, they'll say they'll point to your arm and they'll say arm, and then okay, there's fire on my arm, like that sort of thing.
I
It
love
works.
that you have someone to tell you like, "Hey, you're on fire," just so you know.
Yeah. And then yeah, although sometimes at shows you can't really get that privilege, you just have to be careful because it's
Yeah.
just a big crowd. And the crowd might, like, I suppose, as crowds are, might catch on and be like, oh, cool, that looks fun. Let's also point and say something.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine that it can get confusing, and of course, like, it makes sense that you want someone to like calmly say like, "Hey, you got a little flame on you," because if like people panicked, then you might panic, right?
Yeah. I once did the stereotypical, my friend was like, hey, you're on fire. I'm like, oh, thank you. And then that was the first time my food caught on fire, which was, I mean, I almost felt like silly after that, but but I almost actually sometimes it's kind of laugh, like when it's on, and then like afterwards I'm like, that was bad. We need to be better
Yeah,
because there's that surrealness. You're just looking, you're like, oh, that's happening, with no warning signals, and you just kind of pat it off, and you kind of go.
yeah,
I got a couple burns on, like, the thing is, like, part of the culture is to kind of go shirt off because it gets very hot, and it's kind of going back to that kind of island sort of, I guess, heritage.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so a little need to be careful because there's no shirt to protect you. Um, yeah, but I mean, most of the time you're fine. It's just that that chance of something going wrong
Yeah,
that's really keeps you like alert and focused and kind of motivates you to just kind of perfect it. And it's like I like things where you learn moves. Maybe that's why I like the roller skating and
like physical moves.
yeah, like almost choreography,
Yeah,
like tricks in a way, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. You mentioned on the trip that you were also like a professional dancer at a point, right? Or like a
ooh,
near professional.
I'm gonna fan myself. You so cut you. I don't know if I'm professional, but uh, I would say I'm quite an experienced dancer. That's actually been put on hold. I mean, I suppose if a good friend or a pretty girl like pulls me up, I'll be like, fine. but but at the moment, like proactively learning and going out, it's a bit of a pause. But yeah, I mean, I danced for like on and off, like I think 10 years.
Yeah, that's a
I
long
did
time.
a
That's a long time to be committed to anything.
Yeah, and you know what? Like it was fun. I'll probably say this a lot that it's funny, but it's funny that I actually started as like the most terrible dancer. um, I think at the time, like I was in some spheres sort of struggling socially, and I sort of needed
Mm,
at that time kind of a way to develop kind of social skills, kind of know people, and
yeah,
so I, I sort of got pulled into that, and then I sort of actually liked the activity itself and got really into that. And yeah, ballroom and Latin dancing. I mean, I can list like a whole stack, almost like a rap, of the different styles.
yeah,
Samba, mamba, ramba, bachata. What else? The waltz, the sexy tango. So it's really fun. I recommend it to people. But for me, and I think there's a big learning curve, and so the reward out of it takes a while.
hmm,
And it's quite like it's not necessarily that comfort of your own home because when you're learning, you're like, oh, people are watching me, and it's quite in the open. But really, everyone's just focusing on what they're trying to learn, and everyone's so
right.
panicky they don't even know there's other people in the room. Maybe,
Yeah, that's actually so. That's a good point, and that's something that I try to stress to people that no one is like, even in general, like no one, we think that everyone is looking at us, that like we do something that we think is embarrassing, we think it's embarrassing because everyone saw us doing it, but in reality no one is really noticing anyone else doing anything. Like we're all so like deep in our own heads and in our own spaces that we don't have the brain power to usually we don't have the brain power to really be aware of like all the things you're doing or like that the people next to you are doing.
yeah. I think like that's the couple, I suppose, life lessons that I kind of learned was the one is that exactly you can't just think everyone's talking or thinking about you.
Yeah.
You can't let that, even
Y-
if they are, or the perception of it, like affect you. You've got to. and you got to kind of like do your own thing. You got to like say, how do I want to live life? How do I want to experience this? These people, the interactions are only so long, and I don't know. It's sort of I like the sort of experience of becoming what I call like an extreme version of yourself. Kind of focusing on not what kind of fits into society and so on, and what you should do, and what you almost fear is sort of driving you to do, but rather what do you want to do? What really kind of brings out what feels like true to yourself, and so. And I found that in sort of certain sort of activities and even people. Um, yeah, so for me, I guess that like on the dance floor, you can sort of get a great example of okay, well, guys, the stereotype and I suppose typical thing is that we meant to go ask the girl to dance.
Right. And meant to lead.
Yes, yes. So so there's and especially like a very socially anxious, at least at that stage, quite hectically to go out to approach someone and almost seek like a sort of validation of like, hey, do you want to dance with me? Am I worth dancing with? And to yourself, you're like, am I good enough? Do I look good enough? All those kind of things. And then they
Right.
accept. And sometimes they say, no, they're busy. And then it's like, it's almost like a simulation of kind of approaching someone in a club, but you're going to be doing it a lot. And it's different in its own way. Even when you're doing the moves, like not worrying about messing up, and making it kind of fun. And so those are, I guess, sort of things I sort of found overcoming that really helped me in my dance journey. And now I'm sort of a high-end, sort of, I suppose, intermediate dancer. Yeah. So
Nice.
yeah.
So
I mean,
I want to go back a little bit to what you said about being the most extreme version of yourself. So what are you becoming the extreme version with respect to?
to myself. Yeah. So I think. I can sort of start with where I got this kind of idea from, actually. I thought I've made a friend, like a school friend that we disconnected for like maybe just, I don't know, like 10 years. It was one of my
Yeah.
best friends. Because when I left school, I was just like, yeah, I'm out of here. I need a new space.
Sure.
And so this friend, Adrian, he's a very good friend of mine. He's a very cool guy, very insightful, and he's gone through a lot. And so it's interesting because when he was in school, and a lot of schools, you're kind of a almost compacted version of yourself where you're not meant to stick out and so on. And so, part of that was what I saw in him, but I saw some traits and some interests. Then 10 years later, I see him, and I just call him the extreme version of that. His artistic side became important, and his art, his sort of humor kind of developed, his interests, and sort of social circles. And so I think in my case, so that was sort of his case, kind of becoming that kind of, I guess, kind of wise and artistic sort of person.
Yeah.
And for me, maybe it's, I suppose I could talk about it in a hobby sense. Like developing passions, I think, and also I think things like self-care, like healthy lifestyle, and sort of learning about like kind of exercise and things, and finding hobbies that are passionate about, finding people who kind of share those passions. I think me, like in humor, I'm not quite like silly sort of humor, a little bit insecure about that at a stage, but I can be pretty wild. Now I actually like performing. This is, I think, part of the reason for a person who'd be scared to get on a stage or be seen, I've sort of developed it to someone who, like with the dancing, there's a showcase aspect.
Oh yeah,
Fire dance.
we saw quite the show back in Chiang Mai.
I'm trying to remember. You are
Are
referring
you
to.
putting? I'm referring to the burlesque when you were on stage putting on quite the show with your
Yeah.
coconut bra, your coconut bikini.
Yeah. That was I mean, like one of the guys tour, we kept saying like that was some wild stuff, man. Yeah,
Hey, you
I
were
mean,
vibing though. You were putting on a great show. You were really into it. You weren't awkward at all. It was great.
yeah. Well, I said I like yeah. That's maybe that's one of the other extreme features of myself is I'm pretty down for things. Like my friend Eddie says, like I was the person who like if he has some wild idea, he just knows. Reach out to Stephen. Stephen wants to do it. We did some crazy things. Um, And I suppose that kind of willingness to just experience a new thing. As
Yeah.
kids, the one thing we did was one day it's like, cool man, I got my bike, we got some friends over. I've got this idea. Let's take some roller skates. Let's just get a rope and let's just go with the bike. And I was like, I'm down. And then we took some. So anyway, so I have a little wild side, I think. And then I'm also, yeah, I think, as I said, I like sort of performance things, and I think people have become very important to me, and things like sort of deeper kind of intellectual topics,
Hmm.
and even things like causes like mental health and stuff. These are all things I've sort of my own through development and I guess personality have kind of grown into.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, the that cabaret show with the macho acts, like that was pretty high up there though. That was the first time I twerked. Just yeah. So actually, my friends even have had quite a chuckle about all that whole experience.
Yeah. So, okay, so it seems like the extreme version of yourself then is relative to what you were in the past.
Yes, so it's about kind of taking those, I guess, qualities that you liked about yourselves,
Hmm.
even if it's not like directly moving towards it, but just that kind of process of taking that and just building upon it and making those kind of like, as opposed to asides or just aspects to like core part of your lifestyle and the things you talk about, and just kind of take it as make those things like things you bring to the table in how you spend your time, how you
Yeah.
interact with people. So it's kind of just like focusing, taking kind of all the kind of I guess chaos, but all the kind of I don't want to call it noise, but all the kind of periphery things that are part of your life, but aren't in sort of important to you
Yeah.
to a degree where you want to make your life kind of revolve around it, and just kind of focusing on the cool things. Isn't this the nice thing about life, right? Is you can take kind of your pick your favorites, whether it's actively or just unconsciously, and say, let's make this what my life's about,
Hmm.
and make this the experience if someone interacts with me, or wants to be friends with me that they're signing up for. Um, and I think yeah, and it's a lot of I guess accomplishment in it. And you start to meet. I think you get rewarded also the type of people you meet are your kind of people. I would say especially for humor. If you've got a type of humor, just embrace it. Like some people are scared that
Yeah.
their humor is too unsophisticated or too dark, and that's like already a key point of how people connect, right? The type of crowds they find.
Hmm.
And I mean that's what I tell people. It's just if you like something about yourself, if you find something about yourself really creates a rewarding experience in life, just go for it. And people that sort of help those things shine or appreciate them, those are the ones to hold close. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like this is like part of like a almost like a finding yourself journey or like becoming who you want to be in a way.
Yeah, I think exactly right. It's early in stages in life or just certain parts of life, sort of when you don't have that kind of direction and something to focus on and to kind of motivate and something to be proud of, even and
Hmm.
accomplishments and things that are actually matter to you. It can be tough, and when you start developing these things, you you start to learn about things you didn't even think you'd be interested in,
Yeah.
or things that you didn't even realize was going to be important to you. And I guess that's a cool journey. And It's and what's you can almost take that journey, and when you start where you sort of have a real reflection of kind of where it's gone is when you talk to people and they sort of ask you advice, and you sort of reflect on it, and say, hey, this is what I think is, it's quite cool, and from my experience this might work for you, it might not,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it has become important to me, I think. um it's and it sort of drives me. So I'm pondering on, what are my wants in life, what's even now, all the way down the line. I think it's a continuous sort of journey, but I guess the experiences that come through it, and maybe the dedication in some areas, they help you learn what's, I suppose, what matters to you, and what works and what doesn't work, and what sort of your mind and your body sort of really, really needs, right?
Yeah. What are some of the things that you've learned about yourself through this journey?
Um, you know, it's interesting, like, the state and environment you're in sort of almost forces a perspective on you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I always just think, because school is the extreme form of this, like, I guess the chains of society, in a way, the where so I mean, I was quite an introvert at that stage, and I was very
Mm-hmm.
much guided by people's opinions and what was cool and how to fit in, because that was a tough thing for me to do, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, yeah, I was very introverted. I actually didn't spend that much time with people. I'm a converted extrovert. That's not like a necessary. That's not a good or, I think, bad thing. It's just a different place. I think it's more a better fit for my skin. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I, even personality wise, become quite introverted, for quite I guess, experience orientated, and um, just kind of up for things, and just, I suppose, open to ideas. And I think the type of people I seek is sort of a quite specific. Like, I sort of seek sort of certain sort of conversational journeys. And those ones where you chat and you're like so excited to get back to it.
Yeah.
Um, as opposed to just having kind of friends, I kind of feel like that's sort of the kind of connections I want and sort of seek. There's nothing like kind of two people sharing kind of different life journeys, and kind of finding those kind of overlaps and perspectives. And I don't know, it's that's cool.
So, me and just maybe to summarize or to put it in my own words, it seems like maybe before in the friends area, you were looking for specific people, but now you're maybe just looking for people.
Um, yeah, I mean, maybe it's more the what the person's kind of like, as opposed to what they do, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, it's, if that makes sense, like the person as opposed to what's associated with the person, like their
Yeah.
hobbies and or whatever.
I can definitely relate to that. I know in like college, grad school, and even early career, I would gravitate toward people who shared a lot of my similar interests, maybe who were also like very analytically minded or techies or something like that. Like a lot of my friends like when I moved to Seattle ended up being my coworkers, and it wasn't until later on that I decided I wanted to be more intentional about like just meeting people for being people instead of trying to fill my spaces with the same type of person just based on what their interests were.
Yeah, and it creates opportunities also, right? Because then you can see what other people are kind of into,
Right.
and as opposed to just kind of, and what they're like, and how their personality is kind of valuable in its own way, as
Hmm.
opposed to assuming this is the way to kind of live. This is the way, for a personality to be kind of valuable and enjoyable to you. And sort of, I guess, letting go of that and being like, maybe the experience of the person, and the, I don't know, the pieces that put them together, as opposed to just, you know
Oh,
the
totally.
associations.
I 100% agree. I like you. Yeah, I think a lot of like I definitely felt this way, and I've seen friends who've done this in the past, where like yeah, you think you know like this certain type of person that you are good friends with, and you look for those type of people, but you're potentially um avoiding like meeting completely new people who could bring you to give you new experiences, give you new perspectives in life. A lot of the times people who have similar interests may have similar perspectives on life, so you're not really like gaining new ways of experiencing the world.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The like just even just kind of comparing value systems lets gives you such like I guess perspective.
Yeah.
And the best gift I think for like is if we go into the kind of hobby sphere is giving someone a kind of a passion or a drive or a piece of wisdom that actually sort of has a like a profound or like directional thing that actually change gives them sort of an altered course maybe like
Hmm.
I was I've seen it from both directions, right? The one is like for instance, yeah, this fire dancing. I down the line, I thank my friend so much. I'm like, it's just you've given me like such a kind of important piece of my life in a way, right?
Hmm.
That's what I feel about it. And it was just on a whim. He's like, oh, try this. He thinks that'll suit me as a person, and there's good intuition, I suppose. And then I run a lot of not as much anymore, but I run sort of quite a bit of the board game community here down in Cape Town.
Yeah.
It's not as big as the US one for sure, but it's growing. It's had some tough times, and board games is a great example of that. I teach someone a board game. My sort of my ability to kind of assist facilitate the activity and make someone really come out and see the cool factor that is there, and then seeing them like take this thing that they just kind of randomly tried, just get people who are like probing, oh, let's find something to do. That seems something interesting. And then they try out a modern board game and they have you and other people who just kind of create an experience and make them feel accepted and just have, kind of clean fun.
Yeah.
And then, they disappear. And then you bump into them, a couple months, couple years later. And they're like almost like as enthusiast as you are, and you're like, they're just like, yeah, this is now my thing. They just kind of obsess about it, and like it's just they've introduced all their friends to it, and you've almost like branched off the community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like it's a great feeling, right?
Yeah, it, it's almost empowering, right? It's that's sort of I suppose when you kind of develop a bit of a empathy, I think, for people is kind of through things like that, where
Mm.
you see how something impacts you and the kind of profound sort of effect it has on your personality and your lifestyle and your
Hmm.
direction. And then you're like, cool, give that to someone else, and just because of how it made you feel, and you see that happen to them in their own way, and you're like, wow, you really, I don't know, that's cool for me. Like imagine you just give them their passion that's like that they spend the rest of their life enjoying, and they share that to other people. I don't know, maybe that's community building in its own way, right? Just a community of sharing passions.
Yeah, yeah. You're kind of like helping them become the most extreme version of themselves in a way.
Yeah, that's a kind of a cool way to think about it, I think. Exactly, like um it's if you sort of, and this is the tricky thing I think in facilitating is giving that initial kind of experience and sort of first impression is quite sort of important.
Hmm.
And so you want to give people kind of that full experience. They're not deterred because people, it may be their thing, but if their first experience is not good, they may just give it up. And so,
Oh yeah.
but
First impressions matter.
yeah, no, for sure. It's doesn't matter how like compatible it is with someone. If it goes badly enough, they're out, hey? And they
Yeah.
won't turn back. Um, so but yeah, giving it to them, it's you like you see people light up. I think I like activities, and I think this is why I like teaching people and doing hobbies to the point where I feel kind of, I guess, a semi-expert, like proficient enough where I feel like I can offer value in what I say. Um, it's kind of like a mini expert in a domain where, like, I actually, when I say something, I think it's of value to someone,
Hmm.
and just then you could kind of just offer that to someone else, see it help them on their journey. So and yeah, there's people. It's funny, like they could be living life one way for a long time, and then they have a certain experience, a certain passion. You know, that
Hmm.
maybe this is even extended to traveling, and they realize that's sort of a key piece about them. They just didn't acknowledge or buried or just needed to be nurtured.
Yeah, and a lot of cases they don't know that it's a piece of them, or it's something that they uncover through their journey.
Yeah,
I like to think so. I have like similar thoughts along those lines, that like we get so used to being in a certain path, or like you said, like find thinking that you have like only certain interests, and without exploring you won't discover the other interests that you have. I take it a step further. I say like we put ourselves into a box, and that you think you are one person, but really you could be whatever version of yourself you want to be, if you like choose to take the journey and like make the decision to choose.
yeah, yeah. There's definitely like sort of, I can think, a choice aspect to it. It's kind of seeing the first, like, kind of the enjoyment that you have, and then kind of seeing also how it impacts you, and you know, maybe it lights up your day, maybe it
Yeah.
makes you kind of obsessing about research, or you just want to talk about it the whole time, or you
Yeah.
want to kind of become an expert, and then kind of also extending it to kind of other people is yeah.
So let's stick on this line of thought, but I want to go back to one of your most recent hobbies, fire spinning, and let's explore a bit about how these learnings look for you. Like, you started this new hobby, you're actively working on it. What are your feelings while you're doing this? What have you learned about yourself in the process of learning fire dancing?
Well, at like a very surface level, I've realized you don't have to be scared of fire. That was funny enough. It's another one. I seem to be a bad picker of activities, in the sense I seem to latch onto the ones I generally sort of am terrible at the start.
Hmm.
And maybe I get overlooked because of that. And so, I was actually quite fire paranoid. And luckily, my dance journey had developed to a past a certain point where I felt comfortable sort of learning choreography and sort of, coordination and that.
Hmm.
What I found in this sort of hobby is first, and maybe with a lot of hobbies, finding like a lifestyle that facilitates it and keeps you going. So, like, I actually, maybe I'm famous on the block, but I walk around, like, I liked walking
Yeah.
and I like doing the spinning, but, my focus kind of sometimes goes off, or I lose kind of motivation. It's just kind of you there, and not always feeling it. And so now I incorporate into a walk around the block, and I'm just fire spinning with my practice set
Oh,
and walk around the block.
nice. Yeah.
So you mix kind of, you make the things about it fun for you, and you almost renew the spark just through that. And I get my kind of music in the background, and
Yeah.
I just kind of expand ideas. I've got a friend who's a photographer, and so I've kind of well, it's his hobby, but his friend Innes, but he's so good. I'm just like, you just do that, man. And so he's kind of my, in a way, kind of personal sort of fire photographer. We try to get.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of those photos, and we'll post them on on this video, through the magic of
Oh, cool.
editing.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, you can even see his journey, like kind of learning the type of photography.
Yeah.
The way back, it just didn't start so good, and then I started posting nicer stuff, and some stuff that we started posting on sort of social media that got some attention. I'm funny enough, I'm even on stock photos. They haven't really hit it off, but it's kind of like at least good enough where we feel like people are interested in seeing them.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I made it like now is our sort of our hangout. Like it's cool to have a thing. It's like, hey, this is our thing. You know, we hang out, we take some photos, we talk about
Yeah, and you've
what to
been
do
growing
next.
together, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's to some degree at least sort of developed our friendship where we can have this shared kind of thing we're building.
Yeah.
And yeah, so and then I sort of eventually got him to come to a show recently. We do it on the beach. It's called the Clifton Fire Jam, and he really loved that. He was just kind of overwhelmed because it just went from only him and me kind of taking photos to
Yeah.
all these
I saw
pretty
some
good
of those
people.
photos and videos and they looked incredible.
You should. I'll let you know. Keep it out because when he came the first time now,
Hmm.
he took like a whole bunch of footage. And so he's kind of getting around to that. But I think we're gonna get some good stuff because also his skills and he says like just the color sort of transition at the beach with the sunset and the dark. Anyways, he was loving it, and so when I see him kind of light up, I assume it's going well. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, talking about the fire journey, yeah, it's that kind of, you're doing the movement. I actually started with YouTube, just which most people stick to YouTube.
Hmm.
It's a good journey. I mean, you've even got courses on like academic sites now, like your, can't think of one. But yeah, that's good. But I enjoy you got to get the building blocks right.
Yeah.
It's called the basic weave, which is just your ability. It's almost the basic in dancing. Your ability to move from A to around and change orientation in a kind of cool, presentable way. Um, and yeah, there's a couple sort of core tools. And my friend taught me sort of them, so I didn't even use that much YouTube. But then from there, like most people, I think would stick to YouTube and follow quite a sort of strict regime of steps. And I think that's really cool and probably very, very hireable if you ever get to like a professional level.
Yeah.
But for me, I like figuring out moves. Maybe I just come up with one of my own. I think
Yeah.
quite creative
It's
choreography.
more fun that way, and like it'll be more natural. It'll be more natural with your body movements.
Think about this though, hey? Like no one's got my style.
You're right. Right.
So I guess like what I offer is like kind of cool because it's not comparable to a degree, which is cool because then you're like, well, they're really good in their own way, but I'm really good in my way. And so I'm not just like on a scale to 10, my own experience to see. And so yeah, I've sort of figured out some choreography and moves.
Hmm.
And then, when I was out of ideas, I just watch a YouTube video and like, kind of like what that guy's doing. Let me sort of adapt it or
Yeah.
try it out. And yeah, and then I went into the actual fire because you start a lot of practice sets with the safety and you have the burning block, burning blocks, my bad, building blocks. And then yeah, you're on fire, which is your anxiety raises. And so uh, after a little bit, like that initial anxiety spike kind of starts to wear off even in your first sort of show. And
Hmm.
then each time it's sort of lower each time. And I think just kind of trying to, I guess, find new ways, styles, and new things has kind of developed. I've got quite a repertoire. I think that's probably one of my selling points is because I've to kind of just play around and then I'm like, that's a good idea. Let me refine that and focus it down. Is that
Yeah.
people want to show me like, wow, you can do so many cool things, and I've started doing this kind of aerial moves and no one's doing that, and um, it's quite cool. And it's funny. Physically, I learned a lot. Besides just discipline, I learned um, hand-eye coordination with my
Hmm.
throwing style. I learned, I developed some strength in some areas because some moves are like very. If you're not strong enough, like you can't even do them the way I want to do them. So I had to develop that. Um, had to sort of, I guess, coordination, just keeping track of where depends what it is, but the point, because they're sort of on chains, there's that spatial awareness and
Hmm.
keeping the movements actually being where you think they are, because when they're not where you think you are, that's when you're in trouble. The staff, at least, is more forgiving in that regard, but the staff comes with the issue because then you got to learn balance. That was another thing I had to learn
Oh,
is balance.
fair.
How to balance an object on yourself.
Yeah.
How to when you're lopsided because of a weight, and so in a different kind of orientation. So I feel like I've almost done like a couple. intro courses into I don't know what you'd call it, physical development as a broad sports system, I guess. So that was cool. Yeah, no, it was a lot of those things maybe weren't my strength, especially aerial sort of hand-eye coordination. And now it's just like nothing. I'm like, yeah, so go to juggling because things in the air, just track them. It's kind of like casual, and the throws are getting quite high, and they're getting very consistent.
Nice.
Once I'm throwing things like a few meters in the air and catching them, and then switching to sort of more standard moves, it's starts to look cool and starts to become a point where you can almost get. At this stage, I'd say I'm starting to get to that very. I mean, even now, but like starting to get sort of quite a high level where considering moving into more getting hired for events, and like it's not about the money, but there's recognition in that, and I think I'm
Yeah.
getting to that sort of level. And yeah, we've got a big fire festival on the weekend, so I'm going to hopefully show off some skills. There's international people coming, um,
Nice.
and so I'm going to see how I compare with the big boys. So yeah, hopefully my journey is shows off there because we'll get a bigger crowd, I imagine. So interesting times.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. It'll be awesome to share experiences with folks who've been learning from other places. Um, Maybe even some people who have more of that traditional influence in them, like more of the islander culture. I'm sure there's a lot to learn in this. Um, but speaking of learning, so have these learnings that you've made through fire spinning and your other like hobbies, have you taken lessons from them into other parts of your life?
Yeah, I think so. I think the so it's kind of like it's a mixture of lessons I've learned from this and lessons I've built upon that have taken into this.
Yeah.
Just performance as a thing is a. I've learned a lot there. Just being actually kind of proud and excited to kind of show off what you've got, and to get people's feedback and enjoying that as opposed to trying to hide away and not be in the spotlight,
Hmm.
and also kind of handling that kind of attention in a good way. And so that's sort of one aspect. The and I suppose the anxiety, like sort of, there's a trust yourself thing in any sort of danger activity, right? I mean, even ones that aren't, right. The I've at least got comfortable. In another thing I picked up is improv comedy. This is like the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've realized like trust yourself just in extreme sports is not the only place you need that, right?
Yeah.
It's the trust that what you say gets well received. What you say is fine or it's funny. Your movements look cool. Your accents are kind of cool. And in the fire sense, dropping something during is fine. And so it's that kind of. And then I think the just kind of learning um, to do something fully, like because you have to perfect moves, and there's kind of like I guess a little bit of pride in that, but kind of a healthy sort of um, just sculpting something to the point that you feel very sort of what do you call it, skilled in it, very. And I think, yeah, I think the sort of confidence and the self trust have sort of been good life lessons for me, and just tenacity. Every time you think, oh, this is going nowhere, or oh, I'll never get to that sort of level I see. And the thing with this internet and things is you watch stuff, and it's very daunting.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the gym experience, right? You go to gym, you're like, oh, maybe I'm a tough guy or whatever, and then you sit down, and then you've got this massive guy, who's making machine noises, and you're like, oh my goodness, how do I get there?
Yeah, right.
Um,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like, part of it is don't compare yourself to other people doing the thing you're doing. Kind of that kind of recognition helps a lot, but just also, yeah, just accepting there's going to be people better than you, and just look at rather what they offer, and rather take that. And yeah, I think it's been a cool journey.
So, as we're your journey has definitely been like very interesting and like very expansive. I mean, you've started like many years ago, but let's say for the people who haven't really started this journey or who are early on in this journey, what advice would you have for them if like someone in the audience wants to become the most extreme version of themselves? What's some advice that you'd have for them on how they could do it?
So that's an interesting one. First thing is go for it. It's worth it. It's rewarding, and everyone can kind of become that. So, coming from someone who doesn't have necessarily interests and hobbies, and defining sort of characteristics, and becoming someone who people, it almost is an aura to people, and you have passions, and you're excited to spend your time on these things and to get up in the morning. I think that. And so how do you get there? I think first maybe look for where you want to develop, and part of it is becoming sort of. I found like a lot of things are tied to maybe sort of self-esteem and what's going on in your life and things, and these sort of things help you through them. But also you need to sort of take charge of those things so they don't hinder you. And so you be in a good mind space, and then just kind of through kind of response, think about what do you really enjoy? What are the characteristics you kind of think that other people like that you're proud of, and imagine yourself maybe being the almost the embodiment of those. If you
Yeah.
like performing, imagine yourself, or if you just like I don't know, being entertaining, imagine yourself just kind of being super maybe performance orientated and funny, and you just draw a crowd. Or maybe you're quite um, technical, then you take on some hobbies that really challenge you. I think. Oh my goodness.
Uh-oh, what happened?
No, my phone responded to me. Google's currently listening. It says, yeah, it's got it, but it has to. I have to unlock my device to
Oh.
hear more. So, anyways, as I was kind of saying, um, find find the things that are kind of important to you, and maybe things that are going to help you in life, like having those skills might be useful.
Mhm.
Things that develop sort of people skills is very useful in life, right? Or developing sort of becoming very good at something makes you very interesting, um, that you can bring to the table. And so, and things like the discipline to learn these things will. So maybe just kind of visualize kind of the benefits, and then what do you like I said, what is the cool factors, like what do you put to this table in the world, like what makes you kind of an individual, and you shine and you differentiated, and makes you feel good. It's like the idea of like when certain people around you are, they make you feel good, they make you, and you really like the way you are around them. Now extend that to sort of activities, and maybe even how people respond to your activity of interest, and then just put in the time, right? But also put in the time that makes it fun. You know, at this stage, I used to just do things to get the results. It's about the journey. So
Yeah.
rather than saying, oh, I'm going to run faster, just be like, okay, I want to learn how to run better. How do I make this fun? Then maybe get some music, or find a community. In the fire, I met some of the other people. Just learn, finding people, surrounding people who are passionate about these things, who have more knowledge. It's empowering, and it really helps. And then, if you've got a buddy you do it with, then you almost will keep each other sort of motivated, because you both want to, like, I don't know if it's impress, but at least keep up with the other one.
Yeah.
And be open to like things, like you first got to find these kind of potential passions, and you first got to experience these quality, like even personality qualities in yourself, to the point where you're like, I want that to be important. For me, it was, I want to be, able to kind of in a discussion kind of have something kind of deep, go into like philosophy, or even like people who are struggling, not have passions, or struggling mental health. So those things were important. Maybe things that you feel are holding you back. Maybe just find ways to um, get around that, or active things that help you develop through that. Yeah, I don't know. It's cool to get to a point where you're like, I don't know if you want to feel like a rock star in life, but you know what I mean. You want to feel like life's good and you're excited about it.
You know what?
The
I
right,
feel like you should feel like a rock star. You should feel like the main character in your story because you are.
yes, that's exactly. Feel like the main character in your story. What makes you stick out and identifiable, and maybe even valuable? Don't try to just be better at the things that other people are good at, because you're comparing yourself to them. Rather, find the things that you want to be good at, that you feel you can be good at, and just get really good at that. And then people will immediately see your journey and your passion and the results, and you're gonna find your crowd. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know if I have a step by step process, but just find ways to choose things that are actually important, because in life we keep getting sort of, it's hard to say, determine what's really important to you and what just people think important. Or but if you're on a journey where you feel like you're gaining insight, it's probably a good journey, like when you can reflect and be like, wow, I used to think that, now I think this. And uh, you know, you almost feel like you start becoming someone that could give advice to your past self, that kind of thing. Then it means like you're in a position where you want to bring your past self to that position, and maybe you start extending that to other people. Then you're on a good journey.
I think that's all great advice. I think that's a really excellent for people to hear. It all comes down to be aware of yourself, trust yourself, and try to make these things and life as enjoyable as possible. Fill it with good people, fill it with things you enjoy, and don't worry about how long the process takes. It's a journey. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah, yeah, just exactly. Just keep it rewarding, keep it fun,
Yeah.
and I guess also just kind of get your social circles into it, or
Yeah.
somehow tied to it, because that's nice. Where you're not just on your own in it. You've made some friends in it, or you've found some what are they? I mean, people to bestow knowledge, mentors, senpai. um,
Yeah, it's true. Well, Stephen, this was a fantastic chat. Unfortunately, my laptop is about to die, so we're gonna wrap it. I think we're gonna wrap it up here. But you are more than welcome to come back on the podcast anytime you want. I would love to hear more about your thoughts and about your podcast that you're starting, even.
yes, yes. Well, you are definitely also welcome to. It's early days, but you are very much welcome. I'd love to have you on.
Yeah, let me
Yeah,
know.
and I'm super keen to come back onto this
Yeah.
one. I listen to your podcast a lot, and
Oh, thank
it's
you.
it's really cool, like, I suppose, experiencing it for myself. So keep up the good work, man.
Thank you. This is a great chat, and thank you for listening in on this and experiencing this conversation with us. Um, if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify, make sure to like and favorite and subscribe/follow to the podcast. It helps out a lot. Follow our Instagram for more updates and more random thoughts that I have about the behind the scenes stuff on the podcast. And as always, embrace your chaos with kindness.